In today's video, you're going to get a 2-for-1 deal. One, I am going to talk about handstands, and I'm going to give you the language and the conversation you need to effectively communicate handstands. But two, you're going to understand effective coaching communication techniques, because someone left a comment on one of my videos that said, how can I improve my speech as a coach to say the right things to guide and show direction to become the next type of athlete? Now, this was in reference to a video that I did on the 3 types of athletes, but this prompted me to think about, okay, how can I simulate, model an example of how I communicate to students effectively to unlock the brain-body connection? Because the technique is there. We all know, like, you can go look up handstand technique, you can look up any skill, there's the technique. But the technique is actually not majority of the problem. Majority of the problem is I have thoughts inside my head, and I need to somehow get them into the student's head, the athlete's head, and I need them to be able to apply those thoughts immediately. How often do we say something, and then we just say it again, and we say it again for weeks and weeks and weeks, and we see micro improvements, and we're like, man, how do I get the student to actually lock in on what is being said, do it, find the success, and then carry it with them in the future? This becomes one of the biggest problems in all of coaching in gymnastics. We just repeat ourselves over and over again, and then we think, oh, skills take a long time to learn. Skills don't take a long time to learn, but you don't know this because you think that they do, because you've seen it, like, I have to take weeks to teach a skill, or days, or hours. But that's not true. The problem with skills is the fact that the information in the brain is not getting translated through the body. And there's reasons for this. We're not going to dive into that in this video, but I'm going to give you the conversation. So I'm going to pretend like you, the audience, are the students, and I'm going to talk through the entire story, and I'm going to stop in the middle of the story to kind of explain certain things to you, and I'm going to have to speak for the student as well because I don't have any students in front of me, but I'm going to show you how to communicate handstands without needing any demonstration, without needing to show proper technique. I'm going to communicate handstands in an effective way that students can instantly start improving their handstands. Okay, so this is the exciting part of the story that's going to be happening today. We're going to see how effective this can work. And you can then take this conversation and you can have it with your students, your athletes, and you can see how well the conversation actually works. And you're going to notice that you're going to unlock a lot of things in the kids you're working with. You're going to unlock a lot more than you probably imagined. And the things that you don't unlock, it's more than likely because the way you're communicating the conversation was just not presented effectively enough. And so you'll have to rewatch this video to be like, oh, that's that nuanced point that needed to happen. Okay, so we're going to do handstands. Now, I think I'm going to do a series on this eventually, and I'll start doing other skills to say, hey, this is how I talk about other skills so that it can unlock the brain-body connection in the athletes. But we're going to start with handstands. Okay, and just imagine this is if you were to say, hey, Raleigh, come teach my group a handstand. This is how I'd start it off. So I don't know these. Let's pretend I don't know these kids. I've never worked with them before. This is how I'm going to start the conversation. This is what they need to know. All right, everybody, we're all standing up, correct? We're all standing. Yes? Okay. And we're going to be working on handstands. Now, I want someone to tell me what a handstand is. Does anybody know what a handstand is? Now, I'm going to present this question to them, and I'm going to get answers. Well, it's when you put your hands on the ground, you kick your feet up on it, when you're standing on your hands, and they're going to tell me all this information. And I'm going to say, that is not what a handstand is. Does anybody know what a handstand is? They're going to give me more responses. And they're probably all going to be wrong. Now, they're all going to be accurate to what you understand a handstand to be and what they understand a handstand to be. So they're going to say, you put your hands down, you kick your feet up in the air, you're standing on your hands, whatever it is. It's going to the words they give you are going to sound like a handstand. And I'm going to say they're wrong. Now, pause. Key point here. I am anchoring their mind on something. I'm creating an emotional connection to this conflict now. They think they know what a handstand is. I'm telling them they don't know what a handstand is. Now their brain is tripping out going, but I thought that's what a handstand is. What is a handstand? You can't tell me I'm wrong. I know this is a handstand. And now I have their attention. The curiosity is now working. Okay, so then I'm going to frustrate them a little bit, poke the bear a little bit. And they're going to be like, no, this is a handstand, and I'm going to have fun with it. I'm not doing it in a mean, agitating type of way. I'm being light and playful, but I'm going to kind of get them, going, but I thought this was a handstand. No, you're right, And so, okay, so clearly none of you know what a handstand is. Now, you thought you did, but you don't. And so because you don't, I'm going to teach you what a handstand is. Now, I've got their attention because they want to prove me wrong. They want to prove me wrong. They want to prove to me that, no, Raleigh, I do know what a handstand is. You're just you don't understand me. I'm the bad guy now. Okay. But I'm doing this on purpose because I'm getting their brain to lock in. Okay. Somebody tell me what you're doing right now. No, some people will get what I'm saying and some people won't. So they're standing and I'm going to ask the question, what are you doing right now? They're going to have to answer me. Someone's going to eventually say standing. Okay. If you are standing, then what is a handstand? Now, what I want them to say, what I'm trying to get the connection to, and at one point I might have to give them this information, but what I want them to tell me is that a handstand is the same thing as standing on my feet. That's what I want them to say. I want them to say that because all of them are standing on their feet. So I'm going to lock in a belief, a core belief inside their mind that states, if you are standing on your feet right now, then does that mean you could handstand right now? That is what I'm doing on a subconscious level. Are you standing on your feet? Yes. A handstand is the same thing as standing on your feet. There's nothing different about it. A handstand is not harder. It is not easier. It is the same thing. So, if you are standing on your feet, that means you can stand on your hands. But the problem is we don't understand how we're standing on our feet. So we need to understand how we stand on our feet. So that's what I'm going to explain to you. So I'm going to now explain to everybody, we're going to figure out how to do a handstand, and we're going to get a handstand right now because it's so easy. But we're going to first learn how to stand on our feet. Like, what are we actually doing? So somebody tell me, what are you doing while you're standing on your feet? Then I'm going to get them answering questions. I don't know, this, that, they're going to say a bunch of things. Okay, let's first start with this. I want everybody to look at their toes. So everyone look down, look at your toes, and tell me what your toes are doing. Now, you're going to get two different types of responses. You're either going to get the response where someone's going to say, I can see my toes moving, or you're going to get someone's response that says, I don't know what's happening, I don't see anything. You're waiting for someone to say, I can see my toes moving. Does anybody see anything happening? Is anything happening? Look at your toes. Do you see anything happening? Oh, I see my toes moving. Awesome. Does anybody not see their toes moving? Someone's going to say yes. So you're going to go over to that person and you're going to look at their toes and you're going to point that anytime you see a toe twitch. Moving can be very small is what you're going to explain to them. So I'm just looking for twitches, little tiny, tiny, tiny micro movements. Look very, very closely and see if anything is moving at all. Now, sometimes you'll get the stubborn kid who will literally try not to move their toes. But for the most part, it's almost impossible. You get closer to their toes and you start pointing out which toes are moving. Okay, that toe moved, that toe moved, that toe moved. Your toes are moving. Okay, so everyone agrees that we're standing. Everyone would say yes. Now, if we're standing, did everyone see our toes moving? Yes, all our toes are moving. Everybody's toes are moving, but you're standing still. Why are our toes moving while we're standing still? Now, that's interesting. That's interesting. Okay, we're not going to go into any deeper. We just want to know what that question is. Why are our toes moving while we're standing still? Let's hold on to that thought. But what else are we doing while we're standing? Does anybody else know what we're doing while we're standing? I want everyone to stand on their heels. Just make sure you're standing directly on your heels. What happens if you stand directly on top of your heels? Now, what should happen is some people might start to fall backwards or adjust their balance as they change to stand on their heels. Okay, so my question is to you, did you change anything about you when you stood on your heels? So if you changed something, some of you moved your hips, your shoulders, some of you took a step backwards because you leaned a little bit too far, then where is my balance point on my feet? It's not on top of my heels. It's not directly on top of me. Where's my balance point? And so we're going to find that our balance point, we're leaning slightly forwards and it's over the middle of our foot. That's as general as we need to be. Our balance point is over the middle of our foot. It's not over our heels. It's over so we are technically leaning forwards. Okay, so I'm standing still, but I'm leaning forwards. I'm standing still, but my toes are moving. Okay? Everyone understand this? Now I want you to do one last thing, and I want you to fall or lean forwards without piking your hips. Keep your hips open. And I want you to lean forwards, and I want you to tell me what your feet do. Now I want you to lean forward slowly, not enough to take a step, but just enough to lean forwards more than what you already are. And I want you to tell me what your feet do. And so they will lean forwards and they will feel pressure pushed into the balls of their feet. And they will feel the pressure pushed down to stop them from falling because they're not allowed to take a step. They're not allowed to fall forward. They just have to lean more than what they're already leaning from a natural stand. And so they will feel their feet dig in, especially if they don't pike. They can't push their bottom behind them. Now they're leaning forwards, they're feeling their feet dig in. Okay, did everyone feel their feet press down harder into the floor to stop you from falling? Did everyone feel that? Everyone should feel that. Okay, so now we have learned our toes move, our balance point is over the middle of our foot, and when we fall forwards, we can press our feet into the floor harder to stop ourselves from falling. Interesting. So somebody tell me what a handstand is. Now we're making the connection to the anchor that I just described. So I've anchored the brain in. Standing is easy. We're all standing, and here's what we're doing. I've anchored the mind in that. Now I'm going to correlate it to the future of what we're going to do. So somebody tell me what we're going to do in a handstand. And now I'm going to get somebody to hopefully someone say, I'm probably going to have my fingers move, or I'm going to balance over the middle of my hand, or I've got to lean onto my fingers. But maybe they don't get there. So I'm going to then explain it to them. My fingers are my toes. The knuckle part of my hand, okay, the ball of my hand or whatever you want to call it, this is the balance point, the center of what I'm going to be balancing on. So right there is where I'm going to be leaning over, okay, and I want to be leaning on the front of my fingers. So as I'm over my balance point, I want to lean in my handstand to push my fingers down. So I have to press down on my fingers hard enough to not fall over. My fingers are my toes. Right here is the balance point, the middle of my hand. That's my balance point of what I'm balancing over. And I have to fall enough to push my fingers or my hand into the floor. That is what a handstand is. A handstand is using your feet, but instead doing it with your hands. Just learning your feet, how do your feet work, and then doing it with your hands. Now, then we go and play. Then we just kick up to a handstand and we play. Now, could we get proper handstand shape? Sure. Could we focus on head position and straight elbows and blah, blah, blah? We can focus on all that stuff. But the fact of the matter is we can all stand no matter what shape we're in. We all know how to stand. We can stand arched, we can stand piked, we can stand hollow, we can stand weird shaped. So the question with a handstand should first start off with, is not balancing kind of important? Is it not maybe mostly the first most important thing? Not standing perfectly. Most people don't stand with perfect posture. Imagine a student comes into your door, of your gym, and you're like, oh, your posture is wrong on how you stand. So we cannot do gymnastics until your posture is correct. Now, we obviously are correcting that, but you're not going to be so strict on how they stand 24/7 that they have to stand with proper posture correctly in order to stand. And so sometimes we obsess about other skills and we do not treat them with the same level of standard that we have with everything else. And so sometimes we try to focus on getting a perfect handstand shape, and nobody knows how to balance the handstand, when in fact you can balance a handstand with okay shapes. What you're going to find is that students are going to either overcorrect or undercorrect. And so as they're playing, I will say things like this. I will say, okay, as you kick up into your handstand, you can't kick up too hard, but you can't kick up too soft. You got to kick up just enough to get on top of your balance point. And you're going to feel that balance point on that spot on your hand. Now you got to kick up hard enough that you're falling forwards or over, but you got to stop yourself from falling over. You're kicking up hard enough to fall over, but then you got to dig your fingers into the floor to stop yourself from falling over. But don't push your fingers too hard, because what will happen? It will push you backwards. You don't want to push too hard to push you backwards. Just enough. If you hit the handstand shape and you're up there balancing, what do you need to be doing? Twitching your fingers. Make sure your fingers are always in a state of motion. They need to constantly be moving. Never stop them from moving. Never stop yourself from falling. Always should be falling. Always should be moving. Always putting pressure into the floor. That is what you're trying to do. And try not to make big corrections, because big corrections will make you fall out of position. Make tiny corrections, micro corrections, small corrections, but as fast as you possibly can with small corrections to make little adjustments. We want the smallest adjustments possible. That's what we're going to have in this conversation. And then we're playing. Kids are kicking up. They're kicking up too hard. Now they know why. They're kicking up too soft. Now they know what's the problem. They're not pushing down on their fingers, so then they fall over. They're not twitching their fingers and moving them when they're in the balance point, so they fall out of the balance point. They can't find the balance point. But now they're playing, and they have a reason to play. And it's not that complicated other than just play. And then what I do is I go through and I walk over to every single student, and I help them find the balance point. I help them find the fall onto their fingers, and I help them identify that their fingers are twitching. Keep moving your fingers, keep twitching your fingers, and adjust. Keep the fingers moving. And then I go through every single person and let them feel that. And then I let them feel what falling too far feels like, and I have them push their hands into the floor harder to push themselves back. And I let them feel what falling the other direction, belly side, is, and I have them adjust their elbows, their shoulders, and make the shape change to try to pull themselves back into their balance point. And so now they're feeling what happens when I come out of balance and how do I get myself back into balance. Same thing we do with our standing. When we stand, how do we adjust to get ourselves back into balance? And so we do the same thing. This is the conversation. Now, why this conversation is so important? Because what I have found for effective communication with coaching is you need to, we'll back up a step. The brain learns through correlation. So literally the neurons inside your brain and how they make new connections comes through correlation of previously learned ideas. Now, there is no idea inside your brain that is a complete idea. So when your brain has the idea of dog, there is no thought like picture dog inside your brain. There are aspects of dog, and they're all over the place inside your brain. And when you think of a dog, all those aspects come together, those properties come together to then formulate what a dog is. So you have the number 4 inside your head, you have what a leg is, you have fur, you have certain eyes, you have mouth, and all these things are even broken down even further into smaller and smaller pieces, and then they come together to formulate an idea. This is important to understand how the brain works because our conversations or our words are going to dictate how the brain gathers information and connects these ideas. And so that's what words are. This is the power of words. The power of words is being able to take past information and connect it into future or present information that we're trying to achieve. And so what we have to do is we have to create an anchor. Now, anchoring is a negotiation tactic. It's also a sales tactic. Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference, the book Never Split the Difference, talks about anchoring. Anchoring is something in the sense of the example would be is you go to a car lot, you're going to buy a car. Car salesman comes out and wants to sell you a car. You want to create an anchor in the car salesman's mind on how much money you have. So you say something like, I only have $20,000 in the bank. Now, the car salesman is trying to sell you is $30,000. But you only have $20,000 in the bank. Now he has to figure out how to come up with a solution to your 20. So he's going to say, well, could you borrow 5 from somebody? Oh, well, now you're up to 25. So you got a $5,000 discount. If he's saying, well, how do I get you from 20 to 25? Maybe I could do that. So anchoring is an extreme. You're always trying to go to the extreme. You're always trying to it's a little bit outside of reality, but you're trying to create an anchor so that the brain then has an emotional response to it. It puts it at a higher level. Our brain categorizes memories based off of emotions, essentially. The things that are more emotionally connected to us, those things we remember more clearly. And so anchoring also has an emotional connection to it. Like, I only have $20,000 in the bank is an emotion also. Because it means that if you demand or ask something more than what I have inside my bank, then you're kind of being a jerk. Like, how could you ask for more money than what I have? Do you want me to live my life broke, but also buy this car? So there's an emotion also attached to this statement. And that statement then, and that emotion creates a tension to then kind of narrow in how the solution is going to be. And so the anchoring here is, walking is simple. So here I have this handstand. And kids are working on handstands, and they can't hold a handstand for a minute or 30 seconds. Maybe they can do it for 3 seconds. But we want to try to get a handstand up to a minute, but that seems impossible. So what I'm doing is I'm taking something and saying, it is so easy, it is almost offensive. It is so easy that you shouldn't even have a problem. You can all stand here. There's no problem. You don't have any problem standing. So why do you have a problem handstanding? I am taking the complexity of a handstand and almost making an insult out of it by saying, it's so simple. What is your problem? Why can't you do it? It's so easy. And that creates an offense. Now, I'm not trying to get someone mad, but I am trying to create an emotional response in this anchor that says, standing is so easy, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do a handstand. Now we have emotion. Now we're anchoring into something. We're anchoring into you have inside your brain all the wiring needed to then do the handstand. You've only been applying it to standing on your feet, but you've never applied it to standing on your hands. So all we need to do is identify that wiring and then correlate it to a new concept. Now, we can see this played out in real life all the time. All the time. A good example of this in a business that has capitalized on this understanding is Strider bikes, glide bikes, the bikes that have no pedals. You get a kid, my boys had this when they were learning to ride bikes and growing up. Get them on a bicycle, it has no pedals, and they can just move their feet like running. Kid already knows how to walk, kid already knows how to run, and all they have to worry about is learning to balance on a bike. It's a balance bike, okay? And there's no pedals. Once they learn how to balance, then the question of riding a bike is no longer about balance. You already know how to balance. The question of riding a bike is just, can you pedal? And so, no joke, within 10 to 15 minutes, both of my boys learned how to ride a bicycle after they got really good on these balance bikes. Then we just put them on a bicycle. I took the pedals off. I said, just treat it like a balance bike. So just learn to balance on this bicycle with no pedals. Then I put the pedals on and I let them kind of glide their tippy toes and move down hills and learn to balance and glide. And on their bike, they didn't. And then once they're going and their feet are in the air and they're like, oh, I can glide on this bike. We went down a little hill. I would say, okay, just push the pedal forwards. So then they just put their foot on the pedal and push it forwards. Now they're pedaling. Then they take the other foot, just push it forwards. And within 10 minutes, 15 minutes, they're learning how to ride a bicycle. While other kids are doing training wheels and spending all this time trying to figure out all this coordination stuff, we're taking something they already know how to do, and then we're saying, hey, you already know how to do this. And you also know how to just push your leg forwards because it's no different than jumping. It's no different than standing up on a step. Now you just need to apply the two things and put them together, and boom, you're riding a bicycle. Well, that's the same thing with a handstand. You already know how to twitch and have these little micro twitches going on in your toes. You already know how to slightly lean forwards. You already know how to have a balance point on top of the middle of your foot. You understand this. You understand it so well, you do it without even thinking. The only problem is you do it without even thinking, so you're not even thinking about it and how to correlate it to a handstand. And so when you do a handstand, you're thinking about all the proper technique and all the shapes and stuff, and you're not thinking about how you actually stand on your feet. And I need your brain on a subconscious, unconscious level to think about how it stands on its feet and directly apply it to your hands, because that's when learning is actually going to happen, when you're not even thinking about it. If you can get your brain to say, inside the back of your mind, inside the unconscious part of your brain, if you can get it to go, oh, standing and handstands are the same thing, it starts creating new connections. Starts correlating and saying, oh, when I think handstand, I need to think standing. And then all of a sudden those motor skills start to come into play on an unconscious, subconscious level. So all the reaction timing, all the responses that happen when you stand and you're about to fall and lose your balance, and all the corrections that happen, that stuff starts to come with you into the handstand, because now when you're upside down and you're falling off your balance point, your brain starts thinking, how do I counteract this? How do I adjust for this? What do I do? And it starts doing it automatically because it's a response to falling. Now, we've already got that built into us. We already have a response to falling. We don't fall. When you learn to walk, you typically try not to fall. And so therefore, we already have inside our brain a way to counteract falling. We don't even need to teach it. We're doing it now. So when we go to handstands and you see kids falling all over the place, they're doing that because their brain has not connected the fact that it already has the software. It's just not applying it. You will see, based off of just correlating how you stand to then handstands, you will see instant improvement. Like, I've seen kids who 1 second handstands turn into 3 second handstands, and that's a big jump. I've seen kids who got 3 second handstands turn into 7 second handstands, even 10 second handstands out of a kid who's never done a 10 second handstand in their entire life. And that's a big jump. And so this is huge. And what it does, the power of this, what it does is it builds hope back into the system. The brain wants to know that there's a hope for the future. Like, if I keep doing this, I will get better. But you take a kid who's got a 1 second, 2 second, 3 second handstand, maybe, and you're like, hey, we need to get a 1 minute handstand on the floor. I mean, it seems so impossible because they're getting there by luck. Like when a kid does a 5-second handstand, but they can't ever repeat it again, and it's just luck, there's no hope built into the system that says, hey, someday you're going to get a 1-minute handstand. You're not. So this is the conversation, anchoring, taking what you already know in the past, applying it to the present so that you can then go someplace in the future. This is what I call directional words, taking words, using your words to say, this is where what you have from the past. This is what we're going to apply in the present so that we can go someplace in the future. And so the conversation then leads into, when we're learning handstands, is we need to have a 1-minute handstand on the floor, because that's just what every Olympian can do. Olympians can do 1-minute handstands. I just say this. I don't know if every Olympian can, but I would imagine they should be able to. So I will just say things like, every Olympian can do a 1-minute handstand, and there's no reason why you can't either. Now, why do I say that? Because if you can do something like an Olympian, that's cool. That's cool that something can be achievable and you could say, I can do something that Olympians do also. And it's just a handstand. And that starts to build confidence and belief in self, because you start acquiring things that also the highest form of athlete also have. And so then you start to look more similar to them in one thing at a time. Now, do we need to clean up the handstand? Sure. Do we need to have, squeeze our butt and do, get our feet together? Absolutely. I'm not saying you don't need to do any of that. But that comes, to my opinion, comes in a different form of conversation. It comes later, but it's a different type of conversation, and it's not what we're talking about. We're talking about correlating something you have and directly applying it to something that you want. And when you can do that, you start to build hope and confidence in self and say, oh, I got this. Now, last point, and I'll make another video on this point, but I just want you to understand the layers of the power that's happening in this type of conversation. This is not just some surface layer conversation. I'm just saying random stuff and hoping that it works. This is confidence building. This is confidence building, because confidence is having skills that you learned in the past and being able to apply them to the present to overcome an obstacle that you maybe weren't ready for. So how do I lean on my past skills to overcome the obstacle that's coming towards me, and then from the future, which now becomes my present, and how do I overcome that? That's confidence. And so what I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, you have a skill. You have a skill, and you're really good at this skill, like really good, so good you don't even have to think about it. You can just stand there. You don't have to think. That's how good you are at this skill. You're amazing. And so I'm building a person up, telling them how amazing. I mean, they got superhero skill status. Like, you're an Olympian at standing, essentially. Now all I want you to do is just take that greatness that you have and apply it to the problem that is now presenting itself. And when you start realizing that this is the simplicity of the conversation, what do I have that I can apply to what I'm trying to do right now? What you will find is a lot of things that you're struggling on with the students and your athletes that they're struggling with, they have no idea what they already have that applies directly to that. Like, you take a back hip circle and you just go, today we're going to learn a back hip circle and here's all this stuff and do this and do that. They don't know what they already have that applies to a back hip circle. Front hip circles too. It's like, what do you already have that applies to a front hip circle? Front hip circle will be a good example, and I'll close with this, but it's like, I've taken kids who do front hip circles. Now, I know they're not as popular today, but I'm just using them as an example because it's a clear understanding. Front hip circles were very frustrating for a lot of coaches. A lot of kids struggled with front hip circles. They're not actually as hard as they seem to be, but it was one of those types of skills where a lot of people are like, I hate front hip circles. Why do we have to do this? Okay. Front hip circles were tricky because a lot of skills in gymnastics, I mean, there was nothing really that simulated this in the surface layer conversation. Most people didn't look at something and go, that's a front hip circle. But here's the thing. A forwards pike roll is a front hip circle. But how many kids actually do forward pike rolls? So a lot of kids don't do forward pike rolls. So how many kids are doing forward pike rolls and then learning front hip circles? That was not happening either. A front pike is a front hip circle. And so what I started doing when I started teaching front hip circles and learning this correlation concept of understanding, take something that you already know and then apply it to what you're doing, I would go and say, okay, you need to learn a forward pike roll and you need to learn a front pike. And so I would have kids who are struggling on front hip circles and I would go send them to the trampoline and have them do front pikes. And I would send them to the floor and have them do forward pike rolls. Because I knew that they could get a front pike and a forward pike roll faster than they're going to get that front hip circle. Forward pike roll is flexibility limitation there. But for the most part, they're going to get that. But if they couldn't get the forward pike roll, they could at least get the front pike. And when they did either of those things, when we went back to the front circle, they could feel when they're piking early. They could feel when they didn't have enough rotation. They could feel when they're not slamming their chest into their legs fast enough that they could go, oh, something feels off. The timing, the rhythm, all of it, just because they had something to correlate it to. But prior to having anything to correlate it to, I'm just giving hollow corrections, essentially. Fall longer, lean more, pike faster, do this, do that. But what am I connecting it to? Absolutely nothing. And so I'm expecting that through their intelligence, they're going to figure it out and they're going to get it. But the reality is they're going to learn so much faster by connecting it to something they already know. And by know, I mean they can do it with their eyes closed. I'll leave you with this last little exercise. Ask your students if they have a skill, something that they're struggling on, but they're, the stubborn kid who's like, I can do a kip, but they can do like 1 out of 5, or they can do 3 out of 7 type of thing. Like the kid who doesn't really have it, or even actually the kid who does have it, it doesn't matter. Maybe the kid can do kips every single time or back handsprings. It doesn't matter, okay? But something that someone's going to confidently say, I have this skill. Oh, you do? You have the skill? Okay. Ask them to close their eyes and touch their nose. That's it. And then ask them, is their skill as good as that? That's a very deep question because it's not. It's not as good as that. When you have something, you can do it every time with accuracy and precision. When you have something, you don't make mistakes. I don't close my eyes and accidentally go to my ear or accidentally go to my forehead. I know where my nose is every single time. I know where my elbow is. I know where my cheek is with my eyes closed. I am so familiar with my chin is. I know where I am the entire time. And so by not doing a skill so well that I know where I am, by not having a skill so well to know where I am, then do I really have it? Again, bars is a good example because kids always think that they're good enough on bars. So it's just a common thing, like, oh, my kip's fine. Can I go work on giants? And I'll ask a kid, and I'll say, going back to this, how good can you do something, okay? I'll ask them, I say, well, how many deductions do you get on the skill that you think you have? How many deductions? Okay, so if you get a deduction, do you have the skill? Like, if I have something, I'm not making a mistake. I have it. Why would I be making a mistake? So we have decided that 97% of something is something. But if I handed somebody an apple and I took a little bite out of it and I said, here, have this apple. I don't want an apple with a bite taken out of it. Well, no, it's complete. It's a whole apple. No, it's not. It's got a bite missing. If you hand somebody a burrito and you take a bite out of the burrito and say, here's your whole burrito, they're going to say, no, it's not whole. It's not complete. It's not a burrito. You took a bite out of my burrito. There's something wrong with it. They're not going to look at something that you have when it has missing something from it and consider it as complete or whole. Yet we do this with gymnastics all the time. We look at a skill and we say, well, I couldn't ever do this skill without a mistake, so we'll just consider you having it. And then we'll let people believe that they have something. But never have I seen a kid who knows how to spell their name mess up on spelling their name. Kids do not intentionally misspell their name. They like to spell their name correctly. And if you misspell their name, they'll be happy to tell you that that you misspelled their name and that you spelled their name wrong. So if we can care so much about doing things right, doing things well, then why don't we care enough about the skills that we're doing? And why do we allow these lies essentially to creep into our minds that say you have something when you don't actually have it? And you don't actually have it because you're not holding yourself to a higher standard. And this all comes through correlation of understanding of how you correlate the expectations. If I have something, then and I have it, like as good as closing my eyes and touching my nose, I have something that well, then I can take that and leapfrog off of it, leverage off of it, correlate it to something else. And the application of correlating that is just going to be even that much better. And so this is where the power of having something is that you want to have something so well. It doesn't matter what it is that you do, just have something so well so that you can correlate it to so many other things and it just falls in line so much easier. As you move up in levels Oftentimes kids have less and less and less of things really, really, really well. They have halves of something, 75% of something, 82% of something, and then they still try to build off of that, and they don't actually have it. And so they don't have it so well that it doesn't become something they can leverage because it's not complete. Skills should be done so well that they become a response or a reaction, not a conscious effort. We should be doing things so that it's a response or reaction, it's not conscious effort. And that's when you really have something. That it's just what you do, just a response to something. You don't have to consciously actually try because it's just how you respond. That's knowing yourself, your proprioception, your awareness, everything, putting yourself through so many different, essentially, iterations of a skill in many different ways to get very, very familiar with it. So that's the last thing I'm going to say. You want to have something. That's the reason why we're taking what you have with standing, and that's why we're correlating it to the handstand, and that's how you can use a conversation to actually get kids to be better, and you don't even need to pull out a drill. You don't even need to show them proper shapes or technique. Now we're talking about, hopefully you understand that these are kids who can do a handstand, but they may just need help on balancing. And so I'm not talking about some kid who's never done a handstand before, and that's the conversation you're going into. These are kids who can do a handstand, and then that's what you do for balancing. I hope you got something out of this video. Like, subscribe, comment. Comments are awesome. I love having comments. Dig deeper into the conversation. Leave a comment. I'll leave you a long response because I just love talking about gymnastics. And, give me any sort of feedback you have. Again, I'm trying to grow my channel to 10,000. I'm at like 2,700, something like that. So I got a little ways to go to get my channel to 10,000. But that's where I'm putting myself as some sort of goal so I can really have a reason to show up every single day. But the 1 or 2 of you, the 3 or 4, the 5 of you that leave comments, that like my videos, I appreciate you. You guys are the rock stars to my channel. You guys are the ones that I'm doing this for. So when I get in front of the camera and I'm sharing these thoughts, I'm thinking about the 5 people. The 5 people that are watching this video. I'm not thinking like, oh, I'm going to get 100 people. I'm just caring about the 5 of you. So if you're sitting there in the back of your head going like, is this guy actually talking to me? More than likely, yes, because out of the 40, 50 views, maybe 100 views I get within a week, I know that there's probably only 1 or 2 people, maybe 5 people who are actually listening, actually watching my videos. And so I actually am talking to you. I'm not thinking about the people who are just breezing through my videos, watching 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 seconds of it. Those people, great. Thank you for watching. But I'm thinking about who are you that actually want to improve your group and see them exponentially grow and make your job easier, make your career go longer, decrease the burnout of your group, give you the skill sets you need to increase your value to the business that you're working for so that you're deserving of a raise. Hey, you want to make more money? Imagine if you made athletes just learn faster. They moved up in levels, seamlessly. The culture of your program just got better because there was less frustration, less struggle, less suffering, less, just burnout, essentially. I mean, the power of all of this and how it's going to affect you long term is huge. The value of it is huge. I've seen it. I've seen it transform my life from where I was and where I am today. I've seen it transform the lives of the coaches that work for me, but I want to bring it to you. So 3, 5 of you, 7 of you, leave a comment, give me feedback. If you don't have any thoughts, just leave a comment and say, Raleigh, great video, keep it up, or throw a topic in there that you want me to discuss or talk about. Point me in a direction you want me to dive deeper in. I mean, my brain is just full of gymnastics, just waiting to get gymnastics out of it. I could just talk about this stuff for years upon years, every single subject, every single thing. So I really care more about what is it that you want me to talk about, because if you say, Raleigh, I want you to talk about this subject, bam, I'm in on it. And because I know at least I have one person watching that video, and I want to speak to you and what's going to be helpful to you. If I don't get anything, I just go randomly on how, I eat some food and I just decide that's what my stomach said I should talk on. And then I go, okay, cool, let's do that subject. But that doesn't mean it's going to speak to you right now in this present moment. And if we think about the impact of empowering others, knowing where you're at right now, if I know where you're at right now, see what I did with this video? If I know where you're at right now, then I can connect it to where you need to be and where you're headed. But if I don't know where you're at right now, I can't really speak to you, because I'm just kind of speaking into the ether, into the vapor of the internet, just randomness. So The more you can help me understand where you're at, what you understand, what you don't understand, what you like, what you don't like, what you're confused on, what you're comfortable with, the more I can understand what you're really, really good at, then I can help leapfrog you into the next phase of your coaching journey and help you level up. Not because I have some magical special information or talent, but because I understand this process. It's just the process. And I've been mastering this process. This is what I've been focused on. I as a person, ask myself the question, Raleigh, you could devote your life to athletes and get them to the top. And I pushed athletes to as far as I could feel comfortable going with the resources I had before I realized that I was going to have to overcommit in this way. But my vision shifted and said, you know what? The industry needs more coaches who know how to coach more effectively. So I put my energy on raising coaches up. This is worked into with training my employees, building programming, going into business ownership. And I focused on how do I take people and make them better than me? That's what I put my energy and resources in. And so that's where I have focused on it, getting coaches to out-coach me. That's what I've always been driven after. And so I've done that. I've had several employees work for me and they've gotten better results faster than I got them. Obviously, I had to trial and error the process. And then when I give them the information, it's like, bam, they get the reward. And it's like, well, that's nice for you. I had a struggle, suffering, figuring this out. And so this is where I've put my energy is I want to help coaches become the best that they can possibly be so that they can take their athletes where they want to take their athletes. So my vision is to raise coaches up so that coaches can raise athletes up. And so that's how I see this working. This is what I saw is I saw if I put all my energy into coaching gymnastics, I could be very, very successful in the sense of training athletes and getting them places. That would happen. But the amount of energy and effort that would go into that, I realized that the knowledge and everything that I would learn, I wouldn't be able to share that with other coaches the same way. That it would go into this direction and it would be hard to also serve or be a foundation or platform to help raise others up. And I was more excited about raising others up than necessarily getting somebody, to win states or regionals or go a certain level. Although I know how to do that and I have done it, that's not what really my passion, my fire is. Because for me, it was kind of like once those kids leave, while you have the impact in their life, once they leave, that wasn't fulfilling for me. What I wanted was to transform people's lives who are working, employees' lives, because I struggled surviving as an employee, getting paid certain wages that I'm just like, this is not livable. I struggled with the stress and the pressure of trying to figure it out on my own, not having anybody to mentor me or really show me the ropes. And so going through that journey is like, okay, that's the suffering that I actually want to help alleviate. And so it's for the career-minded coaches, those of you that are coaching that are doing this for a hobby, but maybe you want to turn it into a career. Those of you that are coaching that you're like, man, I would like to do this long-term, but boy, is it stressful and burning me out. I want to make it easier and help you understand the pitfalls and guide you through the problems and understand the processes. Because once you get it kind of figured out and you understand how this game is played in the sport of gymnastics, and I just call it a game because you're just dealing with all these different dynamics going on. But once you understand it, it becomes very, very simple and very, very straightforward. And really getting somebody to go from one skill to the next is not actually the problem. It's more about how do I shape and mold the mindset of the person that I'm working with and getting their mind ready to connect to their past experiences and plug and play it into their future. And so after that, it just becomes a conversation problem more than it becomes a drill and technique problem. In fact, I'd say drill and techniques are not actually the biggest issue. I would say that the conversation is a much greater, bigger impacting issue that needs to get solved. So there you have it. Have a great day. Be blessed. I'll talk to you guys later next time. Peace out. Bye.